Hey, welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff, and we are going to have an awesome show today. Why are we going to have an awesome show? Because we are going to talk about the Ripple response to the SEC. Judge Torres's quick response back. There's some things that are happening, some things that are churning and burning. And now is the SEC versus LBRY still a real thing? Now, Ripple's response to the SEC and Judge Torres's quick response, a major impact on the outcome of the SEC v. Ripple case. Now, we're going to dig in and we're going to review some of the comments from Filan, Hogan, Deaton, all the key people within the legal space that are always providing and helping us dig in and understand what's going on with this case. Now, Asheesh Burla is actually leaving Ripple and being replaced by Monica Long. What does Brad Garlinghouse have to say about 10 years working with Asheesh? We'll find out about that. And as I mentioned, the SEC v. LBRY case has been going on for years. What's the deal? Who's in the wrong? Is it the SEC? Is it LBRY? We're going to review some of the comments from attorney Filan as well on that one. And Cynthia Lummis has has launched a new bill to the Senate. And then in an interview, see, in the bill, she was talking about the CFTC being responsible for most of the digital assets. Then in an interview that we're going to go through, she actually agreed with Gensler that most digital assets are securities. What gives? What's going on with that? We're going to get into that and much more. So if you guys are ready to go, I'm ready to go. So let us kick this thing off. Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
Welcome to On the Chain. I come in this morning and I'm really just, shocked, surprised by this. Check this out. Big support from Susie. What an amazing shock to come in right before you start streaming. So thank you for that. Susie's taken a break from crypto for a little while. Huge fan of the show. Always here with us on Saturday mornings. Great to see you here with us again, Susie, and appreciate you and thanks for the great support. So that's awesome. Really great. Hans Loaded over here listening in the background. Smash the likes if you're here with us. That's awesome. Also, give a quick shout out where you guys are tuning in from. Always great to see, where everybody is coming from. Good morning, Jim D. What is up, Doug? And man, what's great? It's great when we see names that we haven't seen really commenting before, but are within the on the chain community. So that's also really cool. So we got like Bampa Mike, we got Bernard Saku. We got all these names that are popping in here. American Turf, all the way from Michigan. What a great place. We got multiple people. Look at this. We got ex Ropey over here, 23 from Michigan as well, South Wales. Then we got Bo Jackson coming in from Egypt. So we got people that come in from all over the world, which is outstanding because you know what? Crypto is a global phenomenon. So that's what's awesome about this. So I want to dig in. Let's go first and foremost into Brad Garlinghouse commentary on Asheesh Burla actually leaving Ripple. What is going on with Asheesh Burla leaving Ripple? Good thing, bad thing? How does that impact Ripple overall? And what is Asheesh going to be up to? But this is just something fun to dig into and cover, and then we're going to get a little bit more in depth into the SEC v. Ripple case and how some of the community attorneys are dissecting, or I should say, the attorneys within the community who are dissecting this. So, all right, let's pull this one up first. First and foremost, check it out. There we go. All right. So Brad Garlinghouse, this is says, starts out first and foremost, well, I typically like to steal Asheesh's thunder. It only seems fitting that he should get to break this news himself. He's had an incredible impact on Ripple, our products and strategy. I'm grateful he'll continue to do so in his new role on our board of directors. So Asheesh moving from an active, everyday worker to going right to the board of directors. But what else is Asheesh going to be up to? And then Brad Garlinghouse gets in and he says right here, with that, I'm excited to congratulate Monica Long, who's been a key leader at Ripple for 9 years and is stepping into an expanded role to lead both RippleNet and RippleX. That's pretty impressive. So RippleNet, big major software platform that is taking on none other than Swift, and also the RippleX to continue helping to really develop and build and help those developers within the community that want to build on utilizing Ripple, want to build utilizing the XRPL. So much stuff to go. It's just great. Wish her a lot of success there. Hopefully, she does really well. And here it says to continue building on great success of Asheesh and the RippleNet team. So a lot of people then tuning in and giving some commentary here. So let's go right over to Asheesh because, Asheesh saying, after 9 amazing years, I've decided to wrap up my day job at Ripple. Luckily, I'm not going too far as I join the board of directors where I'll continue to provide input on the company vision and strategy. I haven't decided what's next, but plan to continue building in crypto. Now, that's a nice gig, right? Where you can leave a gig and you step down, you say, look, I don't know, I've been here a long time. I'm going to be on the board of directors, but not going to be working every day anymore as the day job. Not sure what's next yet. I'll figure it out and just kind of take a sabbatical. Just kind of, not worry about working for a little while and figure things out and go and chase your passion. But I have a feeling that there's something going on here, something big that we'll see from him very, very soon. So here it says, in the past few days, I've had the chance to reflect on where we've come from and how much we've accomplished both as Ripple and as an industry through some memorable moments, launches over the years. When I started, largest crypto exchange was Mt. Gox versus Binance. Daily volume, 2 million versus 70 billion. Can you imagine? So when Asheesh, started, the biggest exchange was doing about $2 million a day in volume with a total market cap of 1.6 billion, which today it sits at 1.3 trillion. Now here's an early picture of the team in their first ever office. Look at this. I mean, it's crazy, right? Think about where their starting point was and, how they've developed and grown, over the years. I mean, it's really great when you can reflect back and you can say, okay, let's look what was going on in the early days when many of us weren't even in the know about, what's going on with the XRPL or Ripple or maybe even Bitcoin and some of the others, where we'd have some bigger expectation. But here's 2013. So it was within a few weeks of joining. Stripe tried to acquire us. So think back. I mean, amazing, right? So Stripe back in 2013 sees the writing on the wall. Ultimately, the deal fell apart shortly after this dinner at El Tempa Taqueria in San Fran. But who knows what crypto would look like today if Stripe had gotten into the industry in third. Could you imagine if Stripe got into the industry back in 2013? What would actually be going on in this space? You know, it's amazing, right? When he was at Bitcoin Magazine, Vitalik worked out of our office. That was December of 13. I remember him talking about early smart contract concepts. We made him an offer to be an intern at Ripple, but couldn't get the visa sorted out. And he'd later speak at our first Swell conference. It's amazing how things transpire, right? So, and this is a lesson to learn, right? So, a couple things here. One, imagine if Stripe did acquire them, how would that have impacted the outcome of how would that have impacted the outcome of crypto in general, which I think is kind of interesting. right? Because maybe we wouldn't even be here today. Maybe it'd be just, completely, different at this point. And then, it's interesting. Where would Vitalik be? Where would Ethereum be? Where would the crypto space be if he did intern at Ripple? Maybe he would have ended up bringing smart contracts directly to Ripple if he interned there. Maybe they would have hired him. Maybe he would have built out the product. Maybe Ethereum would have been a Ripple XRPL project instead of just directly an Ethereum project. Who knows what would have happened if they were able to get the visa sorted out? Maybe, things would be so drastically different. It's just interesting to look back on how little things, change and then impact the outcome. So sometimes a small negative, from Vitalik's perspective, you say maybe he was relying on that internship, but then look at what it does instead. I think that's really, pretty cool to think back on things like that. Back in 13, they had Ripple Pay, a functional credit card where you could use XRP to make everyday purchases, using the XRPL DEX to convert any currency in your XRPL wallet into USD. Unfortunately, no card network was willing. So think about what they were doing. Now, remember, as we look at the XRPL inherently has built within its structure, it has an exchange. And so when they talk about the XRP and the XRPL and being able to move any asset, and being able to convert any asset. So it was all inherently part of the structure. And I think, back 2013. So imagine, how early they were to the notion of being able to use, being able to use a credit card to then exchange any currency that you would then be in their XRPL wallet, and you could exchange it and convert it into USD. It's amazing. They're decentralizing. So Ripple and the XRPL had a functioning DEX, long before it became a thing. And man, it's amazing. It's amazing to think what would have happened had Visa. Imagine Stripe did get in. Now with the power that Stripe had even back then, imagine bringing in a partner like Visa or MasterCard or something like that. Maybe they would have seen the writing on the wall. Maybe it was just way too early for them. I'm liking how Asheesh is kind of unpacking the history, to be able to go through it from his eyes and his perspective. It's kind of a lot of fun. When RippleNet first launched, crypto liquidity in the market was too limited to support crypto-enabled payments at scale. So we laid the foundation for our end with fiat first, RippleNet, while continuing to iterate on a product that would also use crypto liquidity when the timing was right. So think about the ODL, the on-demand liquidity, which was XRapid back in the day. You remember they had 3 different components, and XRapid was one of them. It was super confusing from a marketing perspective. You get into, when you looked at Ripple and they had the X this, the X that, the XRapid, and it was confusing. And then they brought it all into RippleNet with the ODL, and it started to make a lot more sense as they went through the rebranding of everything. But look at this: it's 2018. The timing was right for the first production of ODL, which was XRapid, as I mentioned. This was a huge milestone, launching the first production cross-border use case that leveraged crypto at scale. So this is really was the foundation when you look at RippleNet utilizing the XRPL, utilizing XRP, utilizing a liquidity mechanism. And that's all what XRapid was, that liquidity mechanism that would then allow the banks and the financial institutions to then forego the Nostro Vostro account. And so this is the beginning, right? Doug brought it up. XVIA, XCurrent, XRapid. So I remember making a video on it back in the day, and you look at it, you're like, what are all these X's, and why do you have to break it up, and how can you simplify it so you can talk to people, especially in the mainstream that aren't going to understand crypto and the technology and all of that, so it's really great. But I'm really thinking about the notion of the ODL, the notion of the XRapid, the notion of a liquidity provider. What is the foundation of why crypto and why XRP, why XRPL and why Ripple was so far ahead of the game from everybody else out there. Because at the time, think about, these early years of 2010, 11, 12, 13, and the notion that Bitcoin was going to replace banks. Bitcoin was going to be the primary solution to start moving money all around the world. Come to find out, doesn't work, too expensive, too slow. Even the Lightning Network, not super efficient. Whereas they come out through the XRPL with all of the technology to seamlessly move money at scale. And, at scale, this is the game changer because this becomes real world. This is real life. We're not talking about, small retail transaction because really at the end of the day, do we need a solution at retail? We really don't. From a consumer perspective, we don't need a solution at retail. Why? Because we have Visa, we have MasterCard, we have American Express, and we have cash. I go into a store, I can pay with cash, I can pay with Visa, I can pay with Amex, I can pay with MasterCard. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want to use, or I don't necessarily need to use, let's put it that way, crypto in order to transact my daily existence. I can go to the gas station, I can go to the grocery store, I can pay my mortgage, I can pay everything utilizing the legacy system, and it doesn't bother me one way or the other because it's not costing me anymore. It's not slow. It doesn't matter to me. However, when you get into the other side of the equation, you get into the business side of the equation, you get into the financial institution, and you start looking at the economy, you look at the cost of money. So a big part of that does then trickle down to retail. The cost of money does have to do with how they're moving money to begin with. So if it's expensive to move money, then that's going to then reflect on and have an impact on the individual. So if a credit card is expensive for a corporation or a company to accept, if they're charging 2.5, 3%, that's what they're getting charged every time someone swipes a credit card. Then that cost of transaction, that cost of money gets pushed back typically to the consumer with a higher prices. So the crypto solution overall, as we look at it from a financial institution perspective, we look at it from the banks, the corporations, all of it then streamlines and makes it more efficient, more cost effective, and then hopefully it translates also over into lesser prices at the end of the day if it then moves into retail. But again, from a retail perspective, it doesn't really impact us 100% directly. Do I want to use my crypto? I don't want to use a debit card. And there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to use a debit card is because if you pay with a debit card, it is final. All right. Whereas if I use my credit card and there's an issue with the retail outlet that you purchase from, especially if you're buying online, then you have a mechanism, third party mechanism to pull back and at least petition your case that something they sold wasn't right. Now, if you're moving your crypto asset to the seller, that transaction is final. So at some point, there's through the credit card mechanism, and that's kind of what they're recognizing and identifying here. Could there be a third party intermediary where the money goes into kind of like an escrow, kind of like what PayPal does? If you utilize a PayPal is that third party escrow that will pull the money back from retail if the consumer has an issue. Consumer reaches out to PayPal, says, "Hey, I use PayPal. It doesn't matter if it came from your bank, credit card, whatever." But that third party mechanism will then go to retail, say, "Sorry, guys, there's a consumer that's not happy. We're pulling your money back. We're not giving it to the buyer, but you're not going to have it while we go through this process." So just kind of some side notes while we're going through this. But Doug, where's the coffee? You're right. I haven't even taken my first sip yet. Look at this, sitting in this beautiful cup, this beautiful cup of Segfredo espresso made today. I haven't even had any yet. So here we go. It's like 20 minutes. I haven't stopped talking. There we go. So, and Doug is right with this statement. Bitcoin isn't the chosen currency. Bitcoin actually does run better on the XRPL. So, so if you think about that, that's crazy. So Leonard is saying you guys still don't get it after all these years. No matter what you say about Bitcoin, it's the chosen currency. Now, Leonard, I don't have an issue with Bitcoin. I'm okay with Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has a role and a place in the world. I think that Bitcoin has first mover advantage. It has first mover advantage from a political perspective as well, because you see a lot of individuals talking about it within Congress. They talk about in reference back to Bitcoin. That's what they know. That's what they hear. I'm sure that's also what the lobbyists are pushing. But so there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin. It has its role in the ecosystem. However, Bitcoin isn't the end all be all. It isn't the chosen currency. I don't know that there is one chosen currency. And that's where you kind of filter back and you look at from a maximalist perspective, you could see that it could be end up being an overall, net negative, because there is no, you can't be a maximalist in the space. Everything has its place. The XRPL is amazing for moving money. You can't dispute that fact. And it has always been, and it will always be. And it's also, it promotes interoperability, something that Bitcoin does not promote. And so when you have the Bitcoin maximalist with this notion that it is the only one and it's the best one, it was the first decentralized currency, digital currency, and many then were built in the image of Bitcoin. So you have to give it that. And again, now at this point, my opinion is that it's a mechanism as a store of value. And I believe there's a lot of others that believe that same idea, Michael Saylor being one of them, that Bitcoin is a store of value. And as you go around the world, people have migrated to crypto and they've migrated money into Bitcoin mainly because of the large swings and devaluations of their own currency. So even as you see Bitcoin to the dollar, dropping in value, and then we're going to see it, go, increase in value, significantly. But from other currencies, when they look at, Bitcoin, that then becomes more stable than where their own currencies sit. Now, the good thing about Bitcoin from a decentralized perspective and the cost of mining, it all factors in. It all becomes very important to the ecosystem. And so I'm not going to take away from it, but I'm not going to kind of go on either, in depth, on this. But there's a lot of different, mechanism, to this. So anyhow, so let's get into just a few more points here, and then we're gonna move on. I don't want to spend the whole time on here. Asheesh Burla, also in 2018, Hodges hosted an amazing crypto dinner in April with Two-Bit Idiot, Dave Balter, Gary Gensler, and others. Selkis was a lot nicer in person, and Gary Gensler was interested in learning about the intersection of crypto and finance. What happened? that's that's a good question. What happened to Gary Gensler from 2018 to 2020? Really prudent, good commentary there. But man, it was just really, it's really great to kind of, look in and kind of see where these guys have, come from, what they've done. Uh, just kind of really cool. I like this comment. Hey, can you send me some snacks? I'm living off ramen since XRP just seems to go down in value. So funny stuff, cool ideas here. But anyhow, let's dig in, to what what we really wanted to get into. And I want to go through what is James Filan, what does he have to say about LBRY? And then we're going to go over to the SEC case. Then we're going to listen to some video with Cynthia Lummis, Senator Lummis. We're going to get into that as well. So let's pull this up here. No, Gary, no. It's great. So here's Doug is saying, let's compare store of values. Bitcoin supply will always be 21 million unless someone does a 51% attack, and evidence to add more coin. XRP coins limited and coin burn with utilities. Yeah. So there's a lot of great, reason for the XRPL. So, all right, here we go. So what does James have to say about this? And we're not going to dig into a lot of the into the PDF here with the SEC motion to strike, but says LBRY case, the SEC moves to strike a supplemental expert report claiming LBRY is trying to correct defects in an expert's report that were exposed in his deposition. I'm just going to let that one sit. So it's amazing. It really, it's mind-boggling that, what the SEC is, everything they do is in conflict, right? Everything they do is kind of contrary to common sense. And this one here again, so here the SEC is moving to strike a supplemental expert report, right? So here's the report claiming that LBRY is trying to correct defects in an expert's report that were exposed in his deposition. And then Jeremy Hogan says it's the same SEC that just violated the court's order on legal brief length. If the judge doesn't allow amendment, but making LBRY pay costs associated with extra discovery, considering he let SEC break court rules earlier, then the fix is in. And as FinLaw hinted, LBRY better include SEC's pleadings from Ripple when it did the exact same thing. So, I mean, it's mind-numbing to see case to case that the SEC continues to pull the same shenanigans that they do, case to case. So how crazy is it? It just, and it goes on. So Scott saying cryptos or exchanges being sued by the SEC should demand Hinman emails, case closed, over and over and over again, case to case. One of these cases, so the SEC v. Ripple case is so critical to every current and future case that will unfold, even this LBRY case, but they have to learn from each other. So Sherry V saying hypocritical. May I remind the SEC that they pulled a similar stunt when they submitted a revised Dr. Metz report after the deadline. Digital Dodo, I have nothing more to add since my initial response. On a positive note, SEC told the truth. They said they were filing an opposition, and they did. Give them some credit here. I like, who does the SEC report to in the government infrastructure? What is the upward chain of command? Who's actually pulling the strings? We all know our leader is about as much use as a chocolate teapot. So who's conducting the SEC orchestra? And it's just it really truly is, unimaginable, just reprehensible. And so, if we think it's just, about the crypto space, right? It's not just crypto, because check this out, right? This is all about meme stocks. And this is this is all about the AMC stock, and a lot of stuff going on with the SEC, and you're seeing them getting hammered, whether it was the GameStop situation or the AMC situation. Retail in general has been just super, super fed up, with what's going on. So look at this. This is a mobile billboard. SEC scandal. Ask yourself, is Gary for the people? I don't know if you guys saw this. Connect the conflicts of interest. Citadel, massive hedge fund. Citadel Connect, massive dark market. Citadel Securities, massive market maker. Get educated. So look at these billboards. SEC does not protect retail traders. SEC is not for retail. SEC is complicit. Market manipulation is not excellent. We demand a fair and free market. So, I mean, imagine, right? It's so crazy. It's so insane when you look at this, from one side to the other. And people are upset. People are just pissed at how things are unfolding, whether it's crypto or whether it's stock related. It's just over and over and over and over again. And so, and I thought this was interesting. So I want to pull up, let me see if I can find this. So let me pull this video up. Let me pull it up in full size. Yeah, this was Pat Toomey. This was September of 21. And this was Gensler and Senator Toomey having a debate over stable coins and crypto asset. I just want to play this real quick, and then we're going to go over to Then we have some other commentary to get into. Oh, you know what? I take that back. Before we do this one, hang on. Let me go back. There was actually no. I want to go to. All right, we need to go to this Hogan. This is on the Ripple reply letter. Let's go to the Ripple reply letter first, and then we'll get into some Deaton commentary on it. This is important. So here we go. Okay, so this was in response. So right, James Filan put out here said the Ripple defendants have filed their response to the SEC's motion to seal its opposition to the Amici request to participate in Dober hearing. The SEC motion to seal the response and the Ripple defendant response are below. So, but Hogan responded here. So he said, per Ripple's reply letter, we can get an idea what is happening here. Seems, I'm assuming here, there were hostile communications made to the SEC's expert witness, or perhaps just hostile online comments, and the SEC doesn't want their expert's physical address disclosed. Okay, gonna get that. Ripple is arguing that only one document exposes the expert's address, and only that one document needs to be sealed. P.S. If you communicate with the attorneys, judges, parties, or experts in the case, you're not helping. Trust the process, as frustrating as it is. And I'm glad that, Jeremy brought that up, because there seems to be kind of like this, current theme right now coming out of the existing political climate, also within many of those representatives on the left, including as high up as a former press secretary, that is calling on individuals to go and protest in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes, to the point where one of the Supreme Court justices had an assassination attempt against him. And unfortunately, this administration has been silent on it. But this has been something that's transpired now for a couple years with Maxine Waters and Pelosi and many of the other congressional representatives that have called on people to get in the faces of some of these representatives. And it's to a point where they want to use mob-like rule to persuade or dissuade certain activity, which is 100% wrong and just really, really, bad news. And so, we can't have the same thing filter into this crypto space and look at exactly, and that's what Jeremy Hogan's saying. Look, you can't communicate with the attorneys, judges, or any of the experts. Don't do it. And it's negative. It's already causing the SEC has fodder to say, look, we want to seal, right? They want to seal and you can't do that. They can't say, hey, we want to get rid of expert, so this, it's just crazy, so we have to be really careful on what's happening. We can't stoop to those levels, so obviously. And XRP Crypto Wolf is saying, I think the SEC is lying as usual to try to seal all documents. I don't think anyone from the community is dumb enough to threaten an SEC expert witness. And that could be very possible, right? Because you have this mob mentality. So Gary Gensler and the left, are going to immediately, utilize those type of tactics, the very tactics that they use. They're then going to project, and they're going to, accuse others of using the exact tactics that they are themselves guilty of participating in and using. And so overall, so it could be very clear, in fact, that that nothing happened, and the SEC is just utilizing current climate, making a motion to seal based off of the fact that maybe nothing did happen, maybe something did. But to Jeremy Hogan's point, we have to make sure that people are not, and I think that that's in everybody's vital interest. So and here we have, so now we have Ripple issues a response. Judge Torres, here we go. So Judge Torres responds, after receiving Ripple's response, ruling from Judge Torres ordering SEC to file redacted opposition brief and exhibits to John Deaton's request to file the amicus brief on expert testimony. So a lot of great things, moving, forward. Torres is fast and decisive. I guess this reflects that she has more power, confidence than Netburn. These are just some comments here. Although they go through Netburn first, so she's been taking her time to diffuse the inevitable appeals as much as possible. Pretty clear if you follow the case. It takes Netburn 2 weeks, but Torres a few hours. I'm pretty sure Netburn already knows her decision. Why wait so long? It's interesting to see some commentary. Wanted to see if Deaton, put any other comments in here. I'm just looking at comments from the community. Is that this report by Mr. Duty will have fictitious XRP holders in it? Once released, the XRP Army does some digging and confirms this. The scrutiny and embarrassment will be too much for Duty and the SEC. I would be desperate to keep it out of the public eye. SEC's, continuously dropping the ball. I mean, it's really pathetic, right down to their attorney fighting, the case for them. Just really pathetic as an overhaul. Just really, really bad. It's just, it's unreal. It's just unbelievable, where the SEC is falling on this. And where their representatives, which are their attorneys, it's just, right from Gary Gensler all the way down. And Peter's right, so the U.S. government and the legal system are making fools of themselves right in front of the whole world. Man, it's unreal, right from the top of the administration all the way down. It's a poor reflection on the U.S. Unfortunately, the leadership in this country right now has zero leadership. They are completely MIA in terms of real leadership. And this is when you have a leadership vacuum in the U.S., things unfold on a global scale negatively. We saw that, many times over the years. The last example of this from a financial perspective, when you had a financial meltdown, and then you also have, issues that arise from threat, security, instabilities. So the last time we saw anything this bad, and this is by magnitude of 10 worse, was during the Carter years. And so obviously, as a result to the 4 bad years under Carter and gas issues and just everything that unfolded from a financial perspective, and it reverberated globally, was the response to with Ronald Reagan, for 8 solid years, that really turned things around. But you have to really, identify that we're in a very similar but worse, position today than we've probably ever been in the history of this country, due to the leadership vacuum and the insane ideas, because you got, the animals are playing, in that you've let them out of the barn, and they're doing whatever the hell they want to do. So, all right. Anyhow, this is Toomey. This was from September. I think it's a really cool playthrough to listen, because, and we'll add some commentary here. So let's go through this. See if I got volume check. Hopefully it's loud and clear. It should be. I did a check on it earlier. So,
among other things, is that not all cryptocurrencies are inherently securities, right? That's true.
There are a small number that aren't, but I think that, as Chair Clayton said when he was in front of Congress, I think very many of these facts and circumstances are investment contracts.
So here's my concern. So some are and some aren't, is basically what you're saying. And I'm concerned that the SEC has not provided sufficient definition for, and explained how it would apply the Howey test, which I think is the court standard for determining when something is an investment contract. So, for instance, stable coins do not have an inherent expectation of profit. They're just linked to the dollar. Now, you might use them in an attempt to make a profit, but that's a second order activity. Is it your view that stable coins themselves can be securities?
I think that, Senator, they may well be securities. As Thurgood Marshall wrote in the Reeves opinion, in defining the scope of the market that Congress, wished to regulate, Congress painted a broad brush, and it actually included about 35 different things inside the definition of a security in the
Okay,
33 Act.
I've just got limited time here, so I acknowledge.
So he's referencing back to the Securities Act of 1933, giving a broad brush to the SEC to make a determination of what securities are. And Pat Toomey, this is again from September, but Pat Toomey is really arguing here that the SEC has not provided clarity. So Gensler is always going to fall back on this notion that they have this broad brush to do basically what they want to do. Toomey is narrowing this in. Now, in a second here, Gensler is actually going to make one comment that we can agree with, but we have to wait for that to unfold. But Toomey is making some really, really critical points here in terms of the SEC not having true jurisdiction due to the lack of clarity and the overreach. And he's kind of alluding to that. But here, hang on one second.
That. Here's my problem, though. I think what you just said was that they may be securities, or that some are securities. To me, a stablecoin doesn't meet the second prong of the Howey test, that there has to be an expectation of profits from the investment. And so if it doesn't meet the Howey test, it looks to me like it's not a security. Now, maybe you've got a good argument for why some are and some aren't. My whole point is, I think we need to have clarity on this. I think you should publicly disclose this. Apparently, there are private conversations where you work with people who are proposing particular structures and you give them advice, your staff gives them advice. I just think we ought to have that publicly, and we certainly shouldn't be taking enforcement action against somebody without having first provided that clarity.
That, before he answers, that is a great point, right? So what is the one tenet that Gensler talks about? He talks about enforcement, the pillars of enforcement. So here Toomey is referencing you shouldn't be taking enforcement action if there isn't enough clarity to really make a determination as to what's a security or not a security. So obviously referencing the SEC v. Ripple case, obviously referencing the SEC v. LBRY case. So if you don't have a clear understanding of what should be deemed a security, why are you then taking enforcement action against these entities? And then Toomey's also referencing the Howey test. So now the one thing that we know with Gensler, and I think it's important to go back to some of these videos, because you get to hear it firsthand and you understand the conflict of reality that is going on within the SEC. And and trying to then understand where it's coming from. Then you see it all play out within the case, because they don't have a case. They don't have a strong enough case, and they're not going back on all four prongs of the Howey test. They're only looking at one element. And that's exactly what Toomey referenced here. But let's go over to what our buddy Gensler has to say.
Well, Senator, this Congress could change the laws, but the laws that we have right now have a very broad definition of.
That's it. That's the one thing that we can agree on with Gensler, right? He said that this Congress can change the law. Now and this goes back to Warren Davidson and Darren Soto in Congress introducing legislation for the Token Taxonomy Act. And so what Gary Gensler is basically saying is, you should have had, within Congress, you have the authority, you have the power to pass the legislation that's required in order to then have the SEC react and respond accordingly. But Gary Gensler is trying to dig in his heels here and making a statement that, in fact, he has broad purview, over determining what is a security and what isn't a security. And he can then himself define what is or what isn't a security. And so he's basically saying, hey, if you want you want to rein me in, then why don't you pass the legislation to do so? Now, he's broadly defining under his own opinion what is or isn't a security. So JMJ here is making a good point. They need to make Gensler repeat all four of the prongs exactly. So, and I would say the exact same thing. You can't just rest on one prong, which is what he always does. He doesn't look at all four prongs. And this is, we have to agree with him on this one point. He's like, hey, you want me to stop? It's up to you. Now it's Congress. It is Congress, because Congress has tripped all over themselves to not pass the proper legislation. But let's continue this for just a few more seconds, and then we have another video that we have to go through real quick.
Security, including a note, including an investment contract and the like. And my predecessor, Chair Clayton, and others actually put out a lot of guidance with regard to the Howey.
I just got to push back a little bit on that. It is broad, but it's well defined. There is a very specific litany of the instruments that constitute securities. As you know this better than I do. Investment contract is one of them. And there is a court decision that lays out the prongs for what constitutes an investment contract. I'm just saying, as a layman who can read English, when I read those tests, stable coins don't seem to meet that test to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I can misinterpret this, I think others could too. And some clarity, public clarity, I think would be helpful.
I see the red light, but I agree with you that
maybe we should just leave it at that. I agree with you.
Some of these tokens have been deemed to be commodities. Many of them are securities.
All right, we can leave it at that. So, we get the idea here. We see what's going on. And the one statement that Gensler made that was very clear and resonates, and the one, and the point that, Toomey is bringing up is that the verbiage, the clarity is actually there, right? The laws lay it out. Now, the one problem that we see within Congress, and we see it over and over and over again, that the laws are in the books, right? And then Congress comes and says, we need more laws. And then you look and you say, well, if you would only just address the laws that we already have, why do you have to write new laws if the laws are already there? Now, the thing is, with the Token Taxonomy Act, again, when we go back to the Securities Act of 33 or the Securities Exchange Act of 34, the notion there was that they want to amend those acts. They want to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. They want to make the amendment to include, clear language to include digital assets. So then it is even more clear as to, how you define a security for a digital asset perspective. So, I mean, you look at this guy, right? And you look at him and you're like, this is the guy that's making all sorts of decision, and it's just really, really bad form. So now I want to go over here because, there is this notion here where, we've got the Washington Post, right? We've got this video here. They're talking to, so this Tory Newmeyer is talking to Gillibrand and Lummis about their bill. So they get into a lot of it. It was really long. There's some other things that were within this video as well. So I started here at the 37-minute mark. It goes on to maybe like 45 minutes. We're not going to go through the whole thing. There's some little snippets here that I think are important. Now, one of them is that, you can't see it. There we go. So one of these notions is that, Cynthia Lummis and the bill, so that this bill that they presented in front of Congress gives more authority, more power to the CFTC versus the SEC. Why? Because they look at digital asset as commodities and not securities. But then Lummis actually says one thing within this. Lummis comes out and says that she agrees with Gensler that most of the crypto assets are actually securities. But did she actually say that specifically? Now, the way it's been reported is that there's a conflict in what she said. So she introduces a bill that gives authority to the CFTC, but then she comes out and says something about her agreement with the SEC, but did she say that exactly? And I think we can agree when we hear her actually verbiage that she didn't actually reference it exactly like the media is reporting it. However, there's some really interesting points here. Now, again, the Token Taxonomy Act, and Chip had references. Token Taxonomy Act was short, easy to read, easy to understand, went straight to the point. This whatever the bill is, responsible financial, blah blah blah, whatever the name of the bill is like 70 pages long. I read through most of it. There's a lot of language in there. Some of the stuff you can skip over, but there are a lot of key important sections in it. That's why it's so long. They packed a ton of stuff in it. They had to address many different areas, but it can get just maybe too much, so we'll see where it ends up going. But let's play this real quick.
And you also do something in this bill where you are creating, I think, a new designation for cryptocurrencies, and you're calling them ancillary assets. Can you describe?
So in the bill, ancillary assets, they reference this over and over again. Responsible Financial Innovation Act. There you go. All right, here we go.
Describe that for us.
Well, that would certainly be like non-fungible tokens and other digital assets that don't have the characteristics of either a store of value or a means of payment.
So it's interesting, they look at these ancillary assets, if it, so an NFT, a store of value like Bitcoin, because they reference Bitcoin a lot, or a means of payment, right? They're also in the bill. They reference stable coins a lot. There's a lot of, tie up within Congress about stable coins, but I think it's interesting here. It's important to really, understand, the notion of where their mindsets are coming from. Now, think about the fact they understand the technology. Senator Lummis from Wyoming, and there's a lot of development within Wyoming, for the crypto asset space in terms of generating economic growth for Wyoming. So think about where she's coming from. Doesn't mean that she understands the technology. We heard, that's why I wanted to play Pat Toomey before, because he's a big supporter of the crypto asset space, as is Warren Davidson, but they don't all necessarily understand all the different elements within the crypto asset space or the blockchain space or the different digital asset. They seem to understand and gravitate to the store of value notion. They understand the Bitcoin notion, the decentralization argument. But then hopefully as they get educated and they understand. So now she's also referencing this form of payment. So I think that it's important. And we have to keep pushing and lobbying our representatives so they do understand. And we have to be very, very vigilant every time they introduce legislation like this to make sure that within the legislation, we don't see anything that could be detrimental from a global perspective on the assets in the United States.
And I think you've overstated. I don't think CFTC is the primary regulator. They just have the obligation to regulate Bitcoin and Ether, the majority of cryptocurrencies today. But the SEC has an enormous responsibility and is going to have to take many of these other cryptocurrencies.
So now Gillibrand here, we know where she falls. So there is also some sort of a divide within the congressional space in terms of their understanding, but yet many of them still fall in this notion that Bitcoin and Ethereum have already been deemed commodities, whereas the others haven't. And this is where we all have a departure from this idea of what they're trying to accomplish. And that's why it's also very important that we understand and we read the language within the bill. So if the language then is referencing specifically stating, a Bitcoin or an Ethereum as a commodity, which they don't, but she's saying already Bitcoin and Ethereum are under the authority of the CFTC, whereas many of the others aren't and will fall under the SEC.
They're going to have to take anything that looks like a security. We use the Howey test as the base, but we further refine the definition of a security. And I can tell you, there's businesses throughout New York City that are desperate to be actually given the ability to be broker dealers, given the ability to be regulated by the SEC. We have players who are asking the SEC to allow them to have an ETF. Waiting for the response. And so we are giving the clarity that the SEC needs so they can actually do the job of regulating a lot of businesses. They're asking for that regulation now.
So this also goes back to Toomey, say, or to when Gensler said to Toomey, look, if you want to, you guys have the power to do this. And so anyhow, let's go. Hang on.
So we
let's fast
refine the
forward.
Howey test, and we
Characteristics of securities that will require the SEC's disclosure capabilities. So one has most of the market cap, the other has most of the small tokens that are going to be the larger perpetrators of fraud. So the SEC's role in this is absolutely critical.
So you agree then with Chair Gensler when he says most cryptos are securities under the Howey test. Is that right?
I agree with him.
Yeah.
But now, if you're looking at the sheer numbers,
Yeah.
I agree with
the
him.
Chairman Gensler.
So right before this, she had referenced that there's maybe 10 to 15,000 different digital assets out there. So her reference here, and I don't agree, but there are within the digital assets of those 10, 15,000. If you look at the sheer number that are out there, right? Because we're all focused in, hey, XRP, XDC, maybe there's like 10 digital assets and we say, hey, why are you referencing it? So we could look at 10, we could look at 100, but if there's 10,000, 15,000 different digital assets, 20,000 digital assets, then what she's saying is the sheer volume. If you look at the sheer number of them, then yes, there's a good chance that the majority of those digital assets are indeed securities. And there's a good reason as to why they're securities. So, and that's kind of how she referenced it. She didn't say just outright. So some of the media, the way they reported it is that she said, I agree with Gensler that all, that if it's not Bitcoin or Ethereum, that all, that the majority are security. She's saying if you look at the sheer number, so again, not looking at 100, not looking at 1,000, but if you look at 10 to 20,000, then there's a good chance that the majority of those are going to be securities, and many of them are have no real inherent value, either.
Gensler also said that Bitcoin is definitely a commodity.
Yes,
So they're saying Gensler says Bitcoin is a commodity. They always reference and go back to that.
So the public statements, the few public statements he's made about some of these definition issues, we're in agreement. And so we think this framework is the sweet spot of getting most aspects of digital assets and most aspects of blockchain technology into the right regulator without over-regulating, because you have to also recognize people are using tokens for democratization and for community.
Okay. So one of the things that I took out of this also is that, which isn't 100% clear, but as an entity, as a company, you then have the responsibility of your own responsibility to then go to either the CFTC or the CSC or the SEC based on where you think you actually fit. So if you think your asset is a security, then you go to the SEC. If you don't believe it's a security, you think it's a commodity, you go to the CFTC. So once you address that body, and this is within the bill, once you address the body, that body is then responsible for looking through, sitting down with you and identifying whether or not, in fact, yes, we think it might be a security, so let's keep you within the SEC, or no, in fact, it's not. But until there's any clarity right now, it's 100% up to Gensler. And I think this bill needs more dissection. So it's introduced and presented within the Senate. It has to go to Congress. It has to go through discussion. It has to even pass the Senate. It has to get voted on. They're going to have to push it to the House, and there's going to be more discussion on that. So first and foremost, we'll see if this even gets any legs, because the Token Taxonomy Act kind of sat in and kind of died in Congress, in the House, and now we're going to see what happens with this one. But the key here is that there's a lot of discussion, a lot of commentary, a lot of important things. Want to give a quick shout out to DNI, Digital Nomad Investor. What is good? What is up, everybody? So that is what we've got for today. I got to run. We've got tennis here in about 30 minutes. So we gotta get out of here. But it was awesome, being able to present to you guys today. We have by far the best and the brightest in the entire crypto space. Big shout out to Susie for the big support in the beginning. Huge support in the beginning. Big shout out to all of our members. If you guys want to join on the chain and give a little bit of support, there's a join button down below. We do have some plans coming up over the summer. We're going to do another digital meetup, which is going to be outstanding. So we're looking forward to that. And we also want to plan an in-person meetup here in South Florida. So with that, again, big shout out to everybody out there. And we will check you guys out tomorrow night, Sunday. See you on the next one. I'm out of here.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.